morning, everybody. Good morning. So good to have you. Man, someone asked me, how are you feeling this morning? I'm like, man, it's easy to get up on Kickoff Sunday. It's just a great energy. I'm glad you're here. Yeah, so it's just thrilled. As a team, guys, we are so privileged to have you. You're spending some time out of your Sunday morning to be here, and we cannot be more grateful for that. I want to transport you from Kamloops in 2023, and we're going to go back. I want to transport you to an ancient city with a powerful encounter. We're going to pick this up in Luke chapter 19. Luke chapter 19 is where we're going to be. It's a very, very well-known encounter with Jesus, and it starts like this in Luke 19. It says, Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. Now, for us, we have probably no idea about Jericho, maybe some walls falling down at some point, but here's Jericho in the first century. Jericho was kind of like the Orange County of Israel. It was a place where people from Jerusalem who were in the hills would go to vacation. This was kind of the warm spot. It was a very, very prominent trade route. There's a lot of money that flowed through Jericho, and this was a place where people would just gather. It was a primary place of gathering for all different types of people, and this is where Jesus is marching through, actually on his way up to Jerusalem. And as he's going through Jericho, we are introduced to a man. In verse 2, a man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. So this word chief tax collector, there's nowhere else in the New Testament corpus, the New Testament letters, anywhere in the New Testament, and as far as I could tell, nowhere else, and even in ancient Greek ideas or literature, that those words are put together. A chief tax collector. And what this meant is that Zacchaeus was a professional extortionist. He was the mob boss of mob bosses, okay? So he was a Jewish man working for the Roman government, taxing his own people. And he wasn't just the one doing the business one-on-one. He was overseeing the people who were ripping off the people of their own money. And so he was not well liked by his people in Jericho. He was seen as kind of the scum of the earth. So it's kind of like you as a sports fan, as the NFL starts, you always have your favorite players on your team, and you always have the hated players on the other team. So for me as a Vancouver Canucks fan, through the 2010 to 2013 season, there was a certain team from the East Coast of the United States. And we always lost to them, especially Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. And there was a player, I won't name him, but you know who he is, on this team from the East Coast, around, like in Massachusetts, that area. And he was always, the weasel. He was always the one barking and chirping and slashing after the whistles. And he was actually, interestingly enough, this individual, who I won't name, but you all know who he is. Outside, like in the media, he's actually a really good dude. But on the ice, scum of the earth. That was, you said it, man. That was Zacchaeus. He is that guy, the guy you just can't stand. Why? Because he is extorting his own people money due to a foreign superpower. This is Zacchaeus, and he's wealthy. He has means. This is Jericho. This is Zacchaeus. And it continues. It says this in verse 3. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. So Zacchaeus hears about Jesus. Jesus, at this point in his ministry, he's 3 years in, he's famous. Everybody knows that he's coming. And so Zacchaeus runs and climbs this tree to see, because he is a short person. He is vertically challenged, okay? But here's the thing, is that this was actually a monumental thing for a man in that time, especially Zacchaeus. It was so undignified for a man to climb trees, as it is today. You see a grown man climb a tree, you're like, what's wrong? It's just, my kids can climb trees, I shouldn't be climbing trees. And this is what Zacchaeus is doing, because Zacchaeus is doing what he can to get a glimpse of Jesus Christ. He's heard of him, and he wants to see him. So here's the deal. For those of you who got up early on a Sunday and you're trying out this church thing. And you have been actively thinking, wonder what this church is going to be like. I've never been here before. How is this all going to go? Man, it is asking a lot for you to change your Sunday morning to come to church. See, Zacchaeus is doing what he can to see Jesus, and you've done what you can to come and maybe peer into this whole thing just a little bit. Maybe you feel a little bit undignified. Maybe it's a little bit annoying that this is the first Sunday of the NFL season, and you have to PVR your games instead of sitting in your lazy boy watching it live. But here you are doing what you can to see and peer into who this Jesus is, like Zacchaeus. What I want to say is, first, well done. Well done if that's you. Second, I want to say this is a worthy pursuit. It's a worthy pursuit, and it is worth your time. Okay, so then, here's what happens. Verse 5. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. Verse 6, so he came down and at once welcomed him gladly. So here's what's going on, is that Luke, the author of this first century eyewitness account of the life of Jesus, he makes it at this point seem like Zacchaeus is only the one he's the only person doing the pursuing. Zacchaeus goes up and he's peering in. But here is the coolest thing what Luke is doing, because it says when Jesus reached the spot, he looked up. Jesus, there's a whole bunch of people, and as he is walking, he stops and he looks up to this tree. So Jesus actually is the one doing the pursuing here. Jesus is actually the one calling this chief extortionist out in a positive way. He looks up at him and says, I must stay at your house. And what Luke is doing with this word must is he is saying, this is a divine appointment for Zacchaeus where everything changes for him. Everything changes in this moment. I must stay, because this whole day, Zacchaeus, you think you were the one pursuing? Actually, I am the one pursuing you. So as you come to Kickoff Sunday, and this is all new for you, and you're trying to figure out which way is up and all that sort of stuff, here's the truth, is that you thought you were the one pursuing Jesus this morning, but what's even better is that Jesus is the one pursuing you. And perhaps it could be that this is a divine appointment for you in your life where things start to change. There's something that happens to the human soul when you are recognized by greatness. There's something awakens in the human soul when you're recognized by greatness. So last week, I took my little guy out for breakfast at Denny's, and it was a Blazers training camp. And so what we did is we looked at the schedule and saw there were some inter-team scrimmages happening for free at the Sandman Center. And so we go to Denny's, and then we go to the rink, and we get there just in time because the players haven't gone out onto the ice yet. And so I say to my little guy, Micah, go down to the tunnel and look in to see if you can see any players as they come out. And I say, Micah, do you see any of the players? He's like, no, I don't see anybody yet. And then his face brightens. He says, Daddy, I see them. I'm not there with them. I said, Micah, put your hand out. And so then these players all line up, and as they come on the ice, they all fist bump his hand. And there's something that happens to little boys when the people that they see as a part-time season ticket holder of the Blazers, when you are close to them and they recognize you, something awakens in the human soul when you're recognized by greatness. This is Zacchaeus. He stopped and he looked up. He says, I want to go to your house. Can we hang out? And by doing so, he upsets all of the cultural ideas of the time. Because here's what happens in verse 7. All the people saw this and began to mutter, he has gone to be the guest of a sinner, or for us, the weasel. He's going to his house. What kind of Jesus is this? Here's what happens with this encounter, because Jesus goes to his house. We don't know what happens. Luke doesn't give us this interaction. But something changes so radically in Zacchaeus' life, because here's what happens in verse 8. But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, look, Lord, here and now I give half my possessions to the poor, and if I've cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. This is what we call the expulsive power of a new affection. The expulsive power of a new affection. Because at this point, what Zacchaeus knew and loved was money. He was identified by it. But this interaction with Jesus expels this affection of money to the point where now Zacchaeus says, I don't want it. See, at the time, the rule said you had to pay back 20% of what you had stolen. But Zacchaeus says, I'll pay back 4 times the amount. He goes over and above anything that was seen to be normal and regular for this crime. He says, look, it's not worth it. Why? Because there's a new affection in his life. There's a new desire in his life. There's a new love in his life. You want to change? Get the expulsive power of a new affection. Where Jesus then starts to change everything. And this is the encounter that he experiences. Then Jesus says to him, today salvation has come to this house because this man, Zacchaeus, is the son of Abraham. In other words, he is in this covenant reality. Then verse 10, for the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. He came to seek and save the lost. What is this God like? He is a type of God who first tells you that I've come to seek you. He's come to seek and save the lost. This is a certain type of person. He's come to seek and save the lost. Oh, but that's the hard part, isn't it? Because in order to be sought and found, you have to recognize that you may be lost. We vacationed in Pemberton for a week this summer, and Pemberton Meadows is beautiful road cycling. So I brought my road bike, and I went cycling. You don't call it biking when you wear spandex. You call it cycling, okay? So if you have, so I went it's gross. Anyway, so we went cycling, and my father-in-law is like an amazing athlete. So his cruising speed is like 33 kilometers an hour, 33, 34. It's fast. I'm about 27, 28. Krista's aunt, Nancy, she's a little slower at 23, 24. So the last few kilometers, I say, hey, Warren, you just give her. You go as fast as you want. And I pulled away from Nancy. And so I was by myself cycling. And I thought for the last few kilometers, I'm just going to push it. I want my heart rate as high as it can go. And I want to push through the end. And what I'd done is I'd figured out on my watch that I biked 18 kilometers to Pemberton, and then it was going to be 18 kilometers back. And so at the 36 kilometer mark, I knew that I'd arrive back to where I started. And so as I'm pushing, my heart rate is up. I'm not looking at my watch. I'm just giving her as fast as I can go. I look down at my watch, and I'm at 39 kilometers. I missed the house. But hold on. Was it 18 kilometers or was it 20? I didn't remember how far I had gone. And so then I'm kind of by myself because Warren's ahead, Nancy's behind. And then I remembered that when we got there, the host said, oh yeah, a few kilometers ahead, there's a mama grizzly and 2 cubs. So then I start to say to myself, I'm not lost. I'm okay. I turn around and I'm looking. I don't recognize any of this. And as I'm realizing that I am lost, I'm telling myself, I'm not lost. I'm okay. I'm really fine. There's no bears. It's all good. And then I see my father-in-law, who's the search party that my wife sent out to find me. And they're like, oh yeah, you missed it. You doorknob. They didn't say that. It's few kilometers back. Here's what I realized. It's not easy to admit that you're lost. It's really hard, actually, because there's everything in you that wants to say, no, I'm okay. I'm fine. It's okay. Here's one of maybe the prerequisites to encountering Jesus. You got to admit that there's something that you're unsure about. Maybe it's your mental health, your financial situation, your relationships, a secret addiction or a secret that you don't want anybody to know. But here's a promise, is that this is a worthy pursuit. And as you pursue him, the greatest news I can tell you on Kickoff Sunday is that he's actually and has always been pursuing you. Unparalleled resources because of unparalleled love.